Welcome to TEDx. Who's excited? Thank you all for being here. Thank you for having me. So I'm going to say something, which is to say that I'm going to be that one speaker who hopes that you'll never have to remember my talk, okay? When you go for the rest of your lives, I really hope you will never have to remember my talk. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because I'm going to talk about fear and sadness and anger and depression and all these horrible things that we don't want to remember in life, right? We know that moment when we liked somebody, but they didn't like us. How did we feel? We know that moment when we're applying for that perfect college and we're not getting in, or we're struggling, we're worried about our admissions. We know about that time when we're worried about money or promotion or job or relationships or family. We're anxious about it, we're stressed about it, we're unhappy about it. We know all those moments. But today I'm going to say that those very moments, those vulnerabilities can actually become our guru. We can actually learn from those vulnerabilities. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, I'm not the first person to be talking about this. I think there are a lot of philosophers in the world, whether it's Rumi or Swami Vivekananda or even somebody like Gabor Mate, have all talked about how vulnerability can actually be a guru. But I've actually learned this in my life the hard way through my own mental health condition. And I actually learned it after I went through the whole thing. And then a friend told me, you know what? Actually, the guru in your life has been your vulnerability. So I'm sharing this with you today so that when you go through your life, because we are going to face some vulnerability in our life, that you know from beforehand that, look, this thing, it might become a guru for me. So let me tell you a little bit about my life, okay? When I was 16, I topped my school and I went on to study in London, okay? I did ICSE and I was a topper. Then I got into Oxford to one of the most competitive courses, which was politics, philosophy, and economics. And I did that subject at Oxford. And then I came back and I worked in my family's luggage business. Then I got into Harvard, which was such a good business school. And I went for my MBA. I came back and then I went to study. Then I went to work in my family's furniture business and I became the CEO. Then I got married, then I had 2 kids, then I switched to journalism and I started writing a column. I became a columnist at a young age. I got my first book out, you heard about that, and then I got my second book out. Now, by the way, now you're thinking, this is all fantastic. I wish I could have a career like that, right? I wish I could become a CEO when I was in my 20s, or go to Oxford or go to Harvard and become a columnist. But the flip side, as you can see over the graph over here, is that when I was 24, I had my first manic breakdown. So I'll describe what manic breakdown means. So mania, for those of you who don't know, is part of something called bipolar disorder, okay? So when I was 24, I was going to Harvard and I had just finished doing an internship with Chandrababu Naidu, who was then the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. And at that time, I got very, very excited by the whole prospect of going to Harvard. I was stressed emotionally because there was some trouble at home and in my family. And there was a whole cocktail of emotions and that were just building up in my mind like a tornado. So much so that I couldn't sleep. And I had all these delusions of grandeur. I started imagining that I was this really powerful person that could change the way that India was growing and developing. And I could do some amazing things. I'm going to Harvard. I'm going to meet these amazing people who are going to become CEOs. And I was just not myself. Now, all of us have ideas from time to time. And all of us are very, very excited from time to time. Then we might be stressed from time to time. But the main thing was that this was usually we are in control. Here I was not in control over my thoughts and emotions. It was just like this giant tornado that was happening. And nobody knew what was going on because this was 25 years ago. And this word bipolar disorder did not exist in our vocabularies then. So my family was really, really surprised at what was happening. And when I had to go to America, my sister and my mother actually had to come with me to make sure I was settled down. And when I went to the campus and then I settled down, then the whole phase of depression set in. And while other students were going to their classes, and after they finished their classes, they were going to the clubs or they were doing other activities and exercising and playing sports, I used to go back to my dorm room and I used to literally just cry in my dorm room. So this was this whole condition of bipolar disorder that set in. And we did not know what it was at the time. But I kept having these extreme mood swings for a long time afterwards. I do want to tell you that just because you have mood swings, there may be some times when you feel like crying or when you feel like happy or sad or angry. That does not mean you're bipolar, okay? Bipolar is really extreme mood swings that happen. So I want to distinguish between that. So these alternating phases of ups and downs used to happen, not all the time, but in the next 20 years, they happened about a dozen times. And so I would go through these extremes, and it would be difficult for me to handle it. I'll share one incident because this happened right when I was in Chandigarh. This was in 2012, and I was asked to look after our family business. It was going through a really, really difficult time. It was losing money, the margins were really low, there was a lot of pressure, people were leaving, competition was high, and it was really difficult to know how to fix this thing. At the same time, I was doing some writing, and I was also trying to keep up with my column, and I had an infant son, and I had a toddler, so there was a lot going on. And I remember coming to Chandigarh, and I had so many thoughts inside my head that I couldn't even make it to the factory. I had to go to the hotel room, take out a voice recorder, and pour all my thoughts into that voice recorder, effectively like talking to myself, because that was the only way I could cope with it. So then my parents realized that, look, there's a problem here. This can't continue. And they actually asked me to leave the family business. And this was really hard for me because my whole life I had grown up thinking that this is the thing that I want to do, is to work in the family business. But I had to accept that. And so then I had to find a new career for myself, and I started journalism and writing. And then because I was so keen to prove myself in that domain, I actually took on too many assignments, got stressed over there also. And then my editor said, listen, you're taking on too much work. I don't know if you can actually do this job also, right? And this was the time when I felt so unhappy about myself that I really thought life is not worth living. I feel like a total failure. So the story that you see of somebody at one end from the outside, that it looks so great that she's going from one thing to the other, that inside story was so different, of somebody who really felt like a failure, who thought that absolutely life is not living, because all her other friends who were at Harvard and who were at other places were becoming CEOs. And yet, here I am today, right? It's been 6 years. I haven't had one of these extreme swings of mania or depression for 6 years. My children are really happy and secure. They're teenagers now, so they're as happy and secure as teenagers can be, I guess. And I've written a book that has done really well on mental health. I've talked to about hundreds of audiences about this subject. And so this turnaround has really happened, that 6 years ago, I was just not in control of my health. 10 years ago, I was wondering what I'd be doing with my life. And here I am today. Now, why has that happened? Okay, that's happened because of a lot of reasons. I've had immense family support, friends, allies. I've gone to a doctor, I've taken medication, I have a therapist, I follow the right lifestyle. I do all these things that you need to do to look after your mental health. But if there's one thing that's really worked, it's been this idea of turning your vulnerability into a guru. So what does that mean? How can something that is really troubling you, how is your anxiety, how is your sadness or depression or concern or worries, how can that actually become your guru? Okay, and in what way has vulnerability become my guru? What has it taught me? First, it's taught me about humility. It's taught me how to become a lot more humbler. I used to think that I was the COO, which was the Chief Operating Officer, or in Indian language, COO really stands for Child of Owner. So I used to think that I was in this high position. But I learned to be a journalist and to chase people for interviews and sit for hours and beg them for interviews and wait outside their offices and do that. So it's taught me humility, detachment, compassion, gratitude, all these different things, right? And it's because I allowed myself to be a learner. Today, you all are all at university here. You're allowing someone to teach you that. Bipolarity allowed. But what is a pathway? Okay, if I did it, what is a pathway that I hope that you can benefit from? So my pathway is this simple idea of ACE: self-acceptance, self-compassion, and gratitude, and self-empowerment. This was the way forward for me. Let me share these 3 stories, okay? Self-acceptance. The hardest thing to accept is that you have a vulnerability, okay? For so many years, I was not willing to admit that I was bipolar because I didn't like the idea of my identity being bipolar. But now I have realized that just because I have and I live with bipolarity, that's not my full identity. If you had cancer, you wouldn't say, I am cancer. If you broke a leg, you wouldn't say, I am a broken leg. You know that a part of you is not working. So similarly, I just say, I live with bipolarity. Or somebody should say, I live with depression, or I live with anxiety. It's not the whole part of you. I think the biggest part of me more than that is the fact that I'm a hopeless cook. That is what my family might say about me. But the point is, there are so many identities that we deal with. And bipolarity or your vulnerability is just part of them. So that multiple identities is very important, and it's not my whole personality. There's a big difference between your condition, a medical condition, and personality. So personality, as my doctor wrote, Aparna has a normal personality. She just has chemical imbalances that need to be looked at. So the acceptance was the first part, and once you accept it, then you can treat it. The second part is the compassion. So I was being really hard on myself and saying, what am I doing with my life? I'm just staying at home and I'm looking after the kids, and my friends have got these amazing careers. They become CEOs of multinationals, or they're working in private equity, or they're earning millions of dollars. And then I realized, you know what? I have this mental health condition that makes it harder for me. Because of when I got married, I had to move countries for my husband's studying at that point. And obviously, I also chose to work from home and be a stay-at-home mom for some time while my children were young. So all these 3 things have been tough on me. Once you're a little bit compassionate on yourself and a little bit less judgmental, then you can actually open up the pathway to be grateful. Okay? And when you start being grateful for everything you have in life, then actually you can be a lot more positive to come out of that black hole. I remember when I was really depressed, I went to my uncle and I said, you know what, I'm very depressed, but I'm still very grateful for everything that I have in life. And he said that gratitude is one of the most important things in any religion, right? So gratitude is really the important thing. And then the third part is the most important part, is the self-empowerment. So I started maintaining a journal about 12 years ago. And I used to ask myself just these 3 questions. What is going on with me? Why is it happening? And what can I do about it? What can I do about it? So simply, for example, I would say when I was going to leave the family business and I was so upset, I just wrote down that, listen, I need to do certain things. I enjoy writing, I enjoy design, I enjoy film. I will do something with that, but I'm scared and I'm excited at the same time. I'm excited because the road is open, but I'm scared because I don't know what's going to happen. So I was very, very honest with myself, and I identified what was going on. Why is it happening? I'm scared because I want to win people's respect, and I don't know if I'll be able to do that. But what can I do about it? I took it into my own hands. Not what can my sister, mother, father, husband, brothers, cousin, what can they do about it? What can I do about it? I took it into my own hands. And a few years later, I wrote in my diary, I am doing all these things now, and this is my life, and I really love it. It's a totally different life from what I was living earlier, but I really love it. So this is me now, waiting for a fashion magazine to feature me as I pose by my bookcase and enjoying life. Thank you. And this is also me now, sometimes passed out on the sofa, occasionally when I feel down, but I'm aware of it and I can come back. And I think that's important to know, that these cycles for me have never fully ended. They will always be there, but I know how to bounce back and take care of myself much better. So I'm just going to leave you with this little piece that I wrote when I was coming out of depression, and that was about 10, 12 years ago. And I had realized that I had failed at the family business. I had not done such a great job in my journalism, although I had done a great job, but I had got, very much imploding and exploding along the way, which was not the right way to do it. And so I wrote this piece, and I said, there are no headlines today. There are no award ceremonies or cocktail launch parties. There are no club class seats and frequent flyer miles. Today, there is the knowledge that nothing was written which would later be regretted. Today is a day where it didn't occur to me how easy it would be to jump off a building. Today, there is a London bus made out of a cardboard box. There's 2 wooden dining chairs with a camping blanket underneath them. Today, there are no moments of despair, no delusions of grandeur, instead an attitude of gratitude, moments of simplicity and spontaneity, and the promise of purpose. So as you go alongside in your journey, I want you to think of vulnerability as your guru. I want you to find a way that you can ace yourself through self-acceptance, self-compassion, and gratitude, and finally through self-empowerment. I wish you all the very best. Thank you.